And good morning, friends. Thank you for being here on the bright side. Welcome. I am Pharmacist Ben. Our number today and every day, we love hearing from you, 844-236-6010, 844-236-6010. If you have questions about health, nutrition, prescription drugs, if you have a comment or success story you'd like to share, we love hearing from you, 844-236-6010. We have Dylan Howard coming up at the bottom of the hour. Dylan is an investigative journalist, and he is the author of a new book called COVID-19, the greatest cover-up in history, from Wuhan to the White House. And we're going to go a little conspiracy theory, COVID conspiracy theory this afternoon, or this morning, on our third segment. In our third segment with Dylan Howard, investigative journalist. He is also, you may have heard the name, he was also famously working for the National Enquirer, and he's written a lot of investigative journalism books about Natalie Wood, and I think he wrote one on Jeffrey Epstein, and this one is on the greatest cover-up in history, COVID-19. We'll talk to Dylan Howard in our third segment. Take your calls in our second segment, 844-236-6010. If you want to purchase longevity products, head to brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com, even better. If you want to start a home-based business, now is an ideal time to start a home-based business. If you start a home-based business now, when the you-know-what hits the fan here in a few months, you will be well-positioned to be able to withstand any kind of layoffs or economic issues, and there's all kinds of craziness is probably up ahead of us, and now is the time to start a home-based business. It's always a good idea to have a home-based business to diversify your income, but now is especially important, and especially when it comes to health. Your health and the health of your family and friends and customers and clients. That's what's so cool about longevity. You help yourself financially, you help yourself physiologically or physically in terms of your health, and you help others financially, and you help others in terms of their health. It's just the coolest business opportunity, and it's the coolest business to be in. If it sounds interesting to you, and if you're an entrepreneur or like the entrepreneur lifestyle, please click on the Join the Team link at brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com. All right. Dylan Howard coming up in our third segment. We're talking about lipidomics. The lipidome. The lipidome is the universe of lipids inside the body. You probably haven't heard, unless you've been listening to this program now, unless you've been listening to me for years, because I've been talking about it for years, but most people don't talk about this very fundamental distinction between the lipid side of the body, the fatty side of the body, and the watery side of the body. The ultimate key to addressing long-term chronic degenerative disease and anti-aging is in the lipid system. Not that the water system is not important. Of course it is. Vitamin C is water-soluble. That's very important. The electrolytes are water-soluble. Those are very important. Potassium, sodium, magnesium. Electrolytes are minerals that dissolve in water. They're hydrophilic or water-soluble minerals, and they're super important and super helpful. But when it comes to dealing with life, when it comes to dealing with stressors, and we have so much stressors going on, don't underestimate the impact of emotional and psychological stress on our physiology just by living in the year 2020 in the United States of America. Even if you don't participate, even if you don't think that you're impacted, we are all impacted. That's why it's so important to minimize your interactions, to minimize the impact, to reduce the impact by turning off the news. But it's hard to avoid all of it entirely, and it's going to show up in our bodies. The more resilient we are, the more able our body is to handle and absorb these stressors, and even use these stressors for growth, because stressors can be used for growth, the easier it's going to be to withstand all the stuff that's going on now and that's going to be going on in the future. Did you hear what I said? Going on in the future. Now's the time to make the body stronger and more resilient, and understanding the fatty part of the body is critical. And guess where it starts? Surprise, surprise. It starts in the intestine. It starts in what are called the Peyer's patches. The Peyer's patches are the connection the intestine has to the lymphatic system. Now, unfortunately, over the course of time, the entire intestine starts to break down, or at least thins, and it becomes more porous, more permeable, and instead of nutrients getting into the lymph and into the blood the way they're supposed to, they leak. They don't go in through the cells, they go in through holes or through pores. It becomes more porous, the intestine. That's called leaky gut syndrome. And there's two key parts to that. There's three key parts to that. Leaky gut syndrome. There's three words. Leaky, okay, porosity, things leaking through. Gut, that's a synonym for intestine, or at least the way we're talking about it. The intestine, leaky intestine, porous intestine. And then the third word, syndrome. A syndrome is made up of a constellation of symptoms, lots of different symptoms. Whenever you hear the word syndrome, like leaky gut syndrome, or metabolic syndrome, or Guillain-Barré syndrome, whenever you hear syndrome, you're talking about a whole bunch of different symptoms, different breakdowns, different things that go wrong. And when it comes to leaky gut syndrome, the list of things that go wrong is exhaustive. It's comprehensive. It covers everything from acne to atherosclerosis to arthritis to autoimmunity, all of it, everything. And you can throw in accelerated aging into the mix. For I've been in the appearance and beauty business and that for a very long time. And let me tell you something. Yes, my fat-soluble, lipophilic vitamin C is very important. And yes, fat-soluble retinol can be very important and very helpful. But taking care of a leaky gut is the most important thing you could do to keep your beautiful, youthful, attractive looks as long as possible on your skin, on your face, to keep wrinkles at bay. It's way better than Botox. Taking care of a leaky gut. Using probiotics. Using more fiber. Using vitamin A. Using zinc. Making sure you're making enough stomach acid. Making sure you're using bile salts. Getting on the ultimate enzymes from longevity. There's a whole host of things we could do to patch up a leaky gut. One more, high hyaluronic acid, glucosamine, chicken soup. These are all help to build the connective tissue in the gut, strengthen the connective tissue in the gut, and help heal a leaky gut. Oh yeah, intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, paying attention to foods. We eat foods, pro-inflammatory foods that affect our digestive system, especially if we have a food allergy. If we have a digestive intolerance, i.e. gluten intolerance. Gluten, and it's not just gluten, but gluten is one of the major causes of a leaky gut. This is why Dr. Wallach, every time somebody says something about a symptom, Doc says gluten. What he's talking about is a leaky gut. A leaky gut is behind everything. So yeah, everything is going to be, I wouldn't say gluten necessarily, but it's going to be a leaky gut, which is caused by gluten, among other things. All right, 844-236-6010 is our number. Dylan Howard coming up in our third segment. We'll get your calls next. I'm Pharmacist Ben. We'll be back right after this. We are back on the bright side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Thanks for joining us. 844-236-6010 is our number. Dylan Howard coming up in our next segment. We're going to talk about the greatest cover-up in history with investigative journalist Dylan Howard. COVID-19, the greatest cover-up in history. And he's got some interesting things to say about this whole viral thing from the lab maybe, or wherever it came from in Wuhan, and all the way to the White House. Actually, from Wuhan to the White House is what he calls his book. We'll talk to Dylan Howard in our third segment and take your calls if we have any at this segment. 844-236-6010. By the way, I'm reading a book now called The Answer by David Icke. And it is, I don't know how he does this, but it's like a 650-page book, 651-page book. And I don't know how he writes so much. I started reading David Icke in the 90s. I read The Robots' Rebellion. And if you want to, even if you don't, David Icke's gotten kind of either love him or you hate him, I guess. Nobody's neutral. He does say some kind of crazy things out there things. But I started reading his stuff in the 90s. And two of his great books, one's called The Robots' Rebellion, and the other one is called And the Truth Shall Set You Free. And they're about the United States history, and then they're about world history, and I forgot which is which. One of them is about the history of the world, and the other one's about the history of the United States. And man, was that a wake-up call for me back in the 90s. And you know what? Everything he talks about, or at least a lot of it anyway, it comes true. And then he writes these long books And he does repeat himself a lot, I will say that. But he's just got this amazing perspective that has evolved over time as he's evolved over time. I don't know, this book, The Answer, it is a big book, but it's super, super cool, and I definitely recommend it. All right, so back to our story here on the, excuse me, on lipids. You can't really talk about the importance of fats and lipids without talking about the lymphatic system. Now, we mentioned the lymphatic system here, but the lymphatic system carries the fats. There's some fats in the bloodstream, but the lymphatic system is really designed. That's one of its things. It's designed to carry toxins and fats and toxins go together. That's another important point about fats is toxins tend to be fatty, and they tend to store themselves in fats, which is why you are going to be more prone towards cancer and other manifestations of toxicity. Yes, cancer is a manifestation of toxicity. You'll be prone towards cancer and other manifestations of toxicity the more clogged your lymph is. You can tell your lymph is clogged, by the way, if you have cysts. If you get a lot of cysts and clogged lymph go hand in hand on the skin, that is. This is why if you have cystic acne, this is serious business. Serious, not to be trifled with. Cystic acne puts you on the road towards major problems because of its relationship to the lymph. And that means moving the lymph and keeping the lymph clean. The best way to keep the lymph clean is at the level of the intestine. That's one of the main things that happens when you go on an elimination diet and do a food diary and eat correctly, eat less food, etc., is you clean the lymph out. But anything you do to improve lymphatic drainage or lymphatic movement is also going to help, and there's lots of ways to do it. The best, of course, is deep breathing, slow deep breathing, which goes together with exercise. Slow deep breathing works because it activates muscles that move the lymph, and exercise also activates muscles that move the lymph. The body is a fluid dynamic system, and as fluids move, we are healthier. When fluids stagnate, we're not healthy. Disease and stagnation go hand in hand. Disease and I call it dirty blood. Disease and fluid stagnation go hand in hand, and fluid stagnation begins at the level of the intestine. I don't know what else you need to hear. This is such an important health concept and will free us from disease if we understand it and we take advantage of it. We understand and take advantage of the fact that helping the fluids move, doing everything from digestive strategies to exercise to deep breathing to helping the fluids move. Lymphatic fluids and they're all part of the circulatory system. Lymphatic system and the blood system is going to be critical. Get on a rebounder. When you start to feel sick, you'll notice that you feel stagnation. I'm talking about a cold. When you start to feel cold coming on, you'll notice that there's feeling like you're stuck, like you're walking in molasses. That's the time to get on the rebounder. Or do some kind of vigorous exercise. When you don't feel like, aside from like acute pain, like if you break something, when you don't feel like exercising is that a lot of times the times you want to exercise. Because exercise generates electrical charges. When you're fatigued, you don't have enough, your electricity's not flowing correctly. All disease is electricity not moving correctly. And fluid dynamics, or improving fluid dynamics, is a critical way to improve energizing the cells, energizing the tissues ultimately, and by that I mean the connective tissues, all the tissues. Energizing the tissues and energizing the cells is a function of electricity, at least partially. Of course, nutrition is important, oxygen is important, but electricity is key. Using saunas can help. Far infrared, near infrared saunas, both. There's advantages to disadvantages to both. They're both any kind of sauna. Dry brushing can help. Hydrotherapy is when you see people jumping in hot water and then jumping in cold water. You can do it in the shower. You can turn the hot water on and the cold water on. Yes, it does take some cojones to do the cold water, but just know you'll have a hot water. If you do it right, you'll have hot water coming up next. And it's alternating between hot and cold water creates a constriction and a dilation of the vessels that acts like a pulse. Helps pump fluids through. There's lots of great ways to do slow deep breathing, of course. Massage is a good way, or any kind of body work can do it. Anything you could do to improve the movement of fluids in the body, circulatory fluids, which are made up of blood and made up of the lymphatic system. And this, by the way, is why bile is so important. Bile, everybody talks about bile as being part of the digestive system. Of course it is, and it's important for helping absorb fats. But it's also a major detoxifier. Drugs and hormones are eliminated in the bile. For you women who are having estrogenic issues, or men for that matter having estrogenic issues, prostate cancer, for example, or prostate BPH can be related to estrogen problems. Estrogen is cleared in bile. Estrogen is a fatty substance, and it's stored. If it's not cleared, if it's not cleared in the bile, it's going to recycle, and it's going to be more active. And if you have an estrogenic disease, you're going to be in trouble. Endometriosis, fibromyalgia, prostate cancer in men, breast cancer in women, uterine cancer. All of these issues are estrogenic issues. All of these have to do with the lymphatic system, have to do with fats, have to do with the lipidome, have to do with the science of lipidomics. This is so important to understand the distinction of fats. By the way, one of the best things you could do for your fats, for helping support fat processing and detoxification, is your ultimate enzymes. Yes, ultimate enzymes should be part of any detox program. And I know there's a lot of detox formulas and detox packs, and everybody's focusing on detox. One of the best things you could do to detox is get on the ultimate enzymes as prophylactically. Take them every day. Just take the ultimate enzyme on an empty stomach. If you take them with food, they'll help you digest your food. That's great. But if you take them on an empty stomach, it's one of the all-time great detox supplements. Among other things, there's so many things that the ultimate enzymes can help you do. They're great for pre- and post-surgery to help accelerate healing. They're great for bruising, to prevent bruising, digestion, and detoxification. And the betaine in the ultimate enzymes is also multifunctional. Betaine is super important for the heart. All right. I'm Pharmacist Ben. 844-236-6010 is our number. Actually, we've got Dylan Howard coming up in our third segment, so don't bother calling. We'll talk to Dylan Howard about his latest book, or his new book, The Greatest Cover-Up in History. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll be back right after this. We are back on The Bright Side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. We're on the air Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Pacific and 10 to 11 Central Time, 24/7 on the archive page at benfuchsarchives.com, also brightsideben.com, where you can purchase longevity products. You can also go to criticalhealthnews.com and pharmacistben.com. We've got blog posts, news stories, videos, lots of great health information on brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, and criticalhealthnews.com. And, of course, you can always click on the Join the Team link if you want to sign up to start a home-based business. That's brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, and criticalhealthnews.com. All right, I am looking forward to speaking to our guest. Dylan Howard is an investigative journalist and the author of multiple books. His latest book is called COVID-19, The Greatest Cover-Up in History, from Wuhan to the White House. Please welcome to the Bright Side, Dylan Howard. Hey, Dylan, thanks for coming on.
Good to be with you, Ben.
Yes, so we talk a lot about the health side of COVID-19, but there's a whole nother side, an underbelly to what's going on. And, I don't know, is it hyperbolic to call it the greatest cover-up in history, or do you really seriously mean that this is the greatest cover-up in history? And if you could elaborate on why it's a cover-up and why it's the greatest in history.
Well, I think we often live in a vortex, and that is our own bubble in the United States and how we look at this. But if you extrapolate and investigate the entire pandemic, its origin, you can trace the fact that there has been cover-up from China and Wuhan to the World Health Organization, to England, to Australia, to the United States.
Is it coordinated? Is it coordinated, Dylan?
It's not coordinated. It is just a monumental series of missteps and a lack of planning across the world. And really that falls to the World Health Organization for being able to deal with what is the equivalent of our World War III. The reality is that this virus began in Wuhan, and the Chinese Communist Party sowed confusion amongst the world by not disclosing the extent of the pandemic, the deadly nature of the pandemic. They silenced whistleblowers who were indeed doctors who blew the whistle on this, and they confused the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization previously, during the SARS epidemic, had been a vocal critic of China, but since their coffers have been lined with money from the Chinese Communist Party, and all of a sudden they're getting praised for their handling of the virus. What we know is we don't know the true extent of the virus in China. China lied about its numbers and did so to cover up for their own deadly mistakes and mishandling. What eventually happened was that Western governments borrowed tactics from the Chinese playbook to hide from their own deadly mistakes and true motivation. But the most harrowing part of this problem is that there has been no worldwide synergy about how best to deal with this virus. And now we see the second wave in the United States, with forecasts somewhere between 250 to 400,000 people set to lose their lives. Actually, it's not lose their lives, because the lives shouldn't be lost in the first place. 400,000 people will die because of this virus and the confusion that our government leaders have preyed upon people of America. And we're seeing it right now with a contested election about whether or not the virus is indeed as deadly as it really is.
What's your take?
I think it is a raging inferno, and I've spoken to sources inside the federal administration that tell me we cannot expect any mitigation of this virus until next summer, which makes Donald Trump's handling of the virus all the more perplexing and contributes to the reason why we have a contested election, because I don't think the United States has ever been so split on ideological lines as it is today. And Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and I'm no Joe Biden apologist, let me get that out there. I'm a pragmatist who is going to be rational about the reality of the situation here. The U.S. Republican Party weaponized the virus by spreading a 57-page dossier to electoral candidates that claimed and doubled down on the conspiracy theory that the virus was released from a Chinese lab in order to divert blame from Trump's state. That's simply not true. The virus didn't originate in a Wuhan lab. It was a fake news tactic, to borrow Donald Trump's language, and draw the blame away for America's dead from the president and towards the Chinese Communist Party. But in the process, he employed a very deliberate and cynical campaign strategy that leaves us where we are today, as you can probably hear CNN in my background.
So is there a bumblingness that's going on with this, or is there some kind of is there a follow the money aspect to it? The whole picture. Is it just one accident after another, or one bad decision or bad choice or bad way of handling after another, or is there something a follow the money thing going on?
All right, let me ask you this question, Ben.
Yeah.
You've been diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer.
Okay.
You have on the right side 3 experts that are versed, knowledgeable, and have treated this for 3 decades. On the left, you have an unqualified person who has no knowledge about how to treat terminal cancer. Where are you going to go?
Well, yeah, okay, I see. That's obvious. How does that relate? Tell me how that relates to the question.
So you've got experts in the field like Dr. Fauci.
No, I'm talking about the politics of it. No, Dylan, I'm talking about is the political and the governments, plural, not just the United States, but around the world, the way of handling it, is it just they're bumbling around, they're making bad decisions, or is there something going on that's deeper than that?
Well, no,
you know what I'm saying?
It's a desire to continue to win over public support by having a strong and healthy economy. A strong and a healthy economy leads to job prosperity, reduces unemployment, and that's what any government leader wants. The reality, though, is these are unprecedented times. This is the world war of our generation. And to discount the views of those terminal cancer experts, the Dr. Fauci's, the Dr. Burrs, and sow confusion and misinformation among the public does a tremendous disservice to the credibility of the president.
Okay, we got to take a break. Just real quickly, do you have an idea where it started? You say it didn't start in the lab, and I don't know where it started myself. Do you think the wet markets, is that the thing where you're saying it started?
Wet market.
The wet market.
Definitely the wet market.
Okay. All right. We got Dylan Howard on. His book is COVID-19, The Greatest Cover-Up in History. I want to talk a little bit when we come back from our break about this whole idea of beginning with one person. That's very fascinating, Dylan. We got Dylan Howard. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll be back right after this. Don't go away. Side talking to Dylan Howard. His book is COVID-19, The Greatest Cover-Up in History. So, Dylan, I love how you started your book. You said it all begins with one single person. And when I read that, it kind of had a menacing sound to it. You know how, like, there's this hidden thing that everybody's all innocent and, you know, the world is perfect, but underneath there's this thing that's bubbling. There's this terror that's bubbling up underneath. You know what I'm saying? It seems like we live that way. Aren't there viruses everywhere? Isn't there? I mean, what's a logical way to respond to something like viral infections?
Look, you're probably more of an expert than I am in this scenario, but the reality is that it does begin with one person, and it's remarkable to think that a virus of this nature would be able to spread so violently and so quickly with seemingly no consequence. And it does begin with one person. It began in a Wuhan wet market. But there are notable individuals throughout this entire story. The reality is that hundreds of thousands of lives would have been saved if Chinese citizens were allowed access to basic uncensored social media. There is one character in the story that is a tragic Shakespearean-type character. His name is Dr. Li Wenliang. He was a physician at the Wuhan Central Office.
Yes.
He blew the whistle in 2019, December 2019, on social media, describing a SARS-like virus emanating out of the Huanan seafood wholesale market. He was silent. He was muted. Wuhan police arrested 8 internet users and punished them for spreading news rumors. Dr. Li was interrogated at detention.
Oh, shucks. Did we lose him? Jason? All right. I think we lost Dylan there. Well, that's unfortunate. But his book, he talks about, the story he was telling, he talks about it in his book about this Dr. Li guy who was silenced. I'm not sure where I stand on this whole COVID thing. So we've got somebody who wants to talk to us. If you want to, I don't know if we're going to get Dylan. Are we going to be able to get Dylan back on? I don't know if we're going to get Dylan back on. That's unfortunate. Dylan, I'm not sure if I agree with everything Dylan was saying. Hopefully we'll get him back on. If you want to chime in, we do have a few minutes to talk to you. If not, I'll give you my take. Somebody wants to talk to us here. Is somebody on hold? Dylan? Dylan? We lost Dylan. Okay. All right. So, what do you guys think of this whole... I have my doubts about it, to be perfectly honest, just because it seems to me like it's coordinated. Dylan doesn't think it's coordinated, but it seems to me like it's coordinated. And, of course, I didn't get a chance to ask Dylan about the Great Reset. See if I have Dylan back on. Dylan? Dylan? No, I guess we don't have Dylan back on. I didn't get to talk to him about COVID-19, The Great Reset. This is the World Economic Forum's book on on all the things that are going to be taken advantage of. Now, you look at this from two ways, I suppose. You can look at it like the idea, you never let a good crisis go to waste, and the crisis that's occurring was not intentional, but it's just you don't want to let the crisis go to waste. Or you can say, well, maybe it was intentional. I don't know if it was intentional or it's not intentional. Dylan says it comes from the wet markets, and that's possibly true. I think we got Dylan back on. Dylan, you there?
Yes, I think the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, I got you. We only got a few minutes here, so I want real briefly if you could finish up talking about Dr. Lee, and then I want to ask you a couple more things real quick. If
So
that's okay.
Dr. Lee tragically blew the whistle on this, and the Chinese government has apologized to he and his family, but tragically, he died of the coronavirus. After blowing the whistle on it.
They say or they know? They say that or they know that?
They know that. And to me, that makes him probably one of the greatest whistleblowers, as tragic as it might sound, in the history of the world.
So now how exactly does this wet market thing work in terms of viral infections? Are you saying it's like a virus that's in a bat or some kind of animal that somehow gets transferred to humans? Is that the idea?
Yeah, just like the virus can be transferred from human to human, it can be transferred from animal to human. And I don't know if you've ever been to one of these wet markets.
I've seen the pictures, yeah. I've seen the pictures.
I've actually been to one of them. In 2008 and 2009.
Must be horrific.
Around the time of the Beijing Olympics. And this was at a time when they were cleaning up the wet market because China was on show for the world. The reality, though, was it was frightening. You could ask for any type of animal.
Like a bear?
Anything. Anything. And it's not for the purpose of family pet. It is for the purpose of human consumption. And we know that you're not going to eat, in most cases, raw beef because it may contain things that need to be treated. So you're not going to eat a raw alligator because it's likely to be carrying diseases that we don't know about. And these wet markets are a tinderbox of problems.
A petri dish of viruses.
They need to shut down.
So hang on, Doc, Dylan. Is it a delicacy? Is aardvark considered a delicacy and bear considered a delicacy? And is that why they have these different animals, like this whole range of animals, or is it they'll eat anything? What's the point?
The Chinese have interesting eating habits. I mean, I've been to China and eaten scorpions. These are just cultural things that are not necessarily common in the Western society, but in other territories are considered routine. But the consequences of what might be considered routine in one area is obviously very, very challenging for the rest of the world. And therein lies where the World Health Organization needs to be held accountable for its role in failing to be able to provide guidance to the world on not only how to deal with the virus, but take preemptive steps to stop the virus from ever spreading.
Are you familiar with COVID-19, the book COVID-19, The Great Reset, but from the World Economic Forum?
Not.
Okay, so this is a book that was put out by the World Economic Forum in Davos. The guy, I forgot the guy founder of it, Klaus Schwab, I think his name is. And they wrote a book, and it's very easy to read. It's not, hardcore economics or anything. And it talks about all of the ways the world's going to change as a result of this COVID thing. And it mostly involves digitalization, elimination of money, a way of centralizing data and information. What do you see? Do you see this as like you never let a good crisis go to waste, or do you see a deeper connection?
I see big tech benefiting from the disease tremendously. I think consumer behavior will change. Consumer product consumption will change. How
will consumption change? Less or more?
I think there will be a seismic shift to plant-based and sustainable products. for our own safety. I think there will be a tremendous shift towards cannabinoids and
towards what? Cannabinoids?
Cannabis.
Cannabis. Yes.
Of household products as a natural solution to chemicals. I think that there could be some good that does come out of this. It obviously doesn't make up for the hundreds of thousands of lives that have been lost in the United States and around the world, but it certainly could affect change for good. But on the downside, more control in big tech is also a very frightening thought.
Are you familiar with The Social Dilemma?
I am, yes.
Did you see it?
Yes.
So, I mean, do you see that more of that? Do you think more of that's going to be going on?
I do. I think that the Big Brother is watching notion is going to trace every step of a human's movement for the rest of our lives. And that obviously raises big questions about whether it's an infringement.
Will you write a book on that? Dylan, will you write a book on that?
If you want me to.
Yes, I do. As an investigative journalist, I want you to write a book on all of that. So that's a really juicy subject, and I'd love to have you on talking about it. All right, that's all the time. Hey, Dylan, thanks so much. What's that?
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, buddy. All right. Dylan Howard, his book is COVID-19, The Greatest Cover-Up in History. Thanks for listening to The Bright Side on Pharmacist Ben. Have a wonderful, beautiful, awesome, spectacular day. We'll talk to you later, folks. Bye for now.